Hello and welcome to the Fully Charged Show podcast. Now in this episode, this is a recording of a discussion held at Fully Charged Live on the 1st of February this year. In this discussion, Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield stood in for me, and she's from Transport Evolved in America, and she took over and led the discussion about how to choose an electric vehicle. She is joined by a brilliant panel including Raejean Fellows from the EAA, Seneca Giese from Current Automotive, and Ken Bokor from the EV Revolution Show. Nikki leads the panel to talk about the best way to get an EV, either new or second-hand.
Seneca runs Current Automotive, specializes in helping people find an EV for them, right? And second-hand used cars, helping people plugging in regardless of their budget and what they need. You find them a car. Tell us a little bit about Current.
I'm a longtime Tesla employee, 9 years, number 126. Sold the Roadster, if you guys recall, the first car, for 2.5 years, ascended through many roles, ending with head of CPO and certified pre-owned for North America. And as Tesla was ramping Model 3 resources, we couldn't really continue to do the, almost new refurbishment for the cars. So I departed with a couple colleagues, started Current Automotive, and we specialize in Tesla, but we sell all brands. And so focused on under 10,000 to up to 100,000 used electric vehicles.
Fantastic. And Raejean, for those who don't know, is with the Electric Auto Association. Raejean, disclaimer, because Raejean and I have worked together on the past on the Transport Evolved channel. We promote the Electric Auto Association because I love what they do. They've been promoting electric vehicles since 1967. So tell us a little bit about the EAA, Raejean.
The Electric Auto Association is a over 50-year-old organization. We're the longest standing, largest global organization, nonprofit, supporting electric vehicles in over 80 chapters throughout the US and Canada, and our members get out there in their communities and tell people about the benefits of driving electric, not only at National Drive Electric Week and Drive Electric Earth Day, which is coming up, but all year long in library presentations with Rotary clubs. That's what we do. We're grassroots.
And you do a fantastic amount of work all over the US and all around the world as well. Fantastic chapters. And if you live in any major city in the US, the chances are there is an EAA chapter within about 50 miles, right, Raejean?
That's right, over 80.
Even in Alaska. You've even got a chapter in Alaska.
We do, a very active chapter in Alaska.
Exactly. And Ken is our neighbor to the north, right, Ken?
I am, and I feel at home because you look like a Mountie. So I thought, I love the outfit for us Canadians in the crowd. Yeah, thank you for coming. I'm Kenneth Bokor, EV Revolution Show. It's a YouTube show about EVs, and I look at it from a holistic, global perspective and try to bring it down to understanding and providing education on what's going on in the marketplace. Because as everybody knows, there's a ton of stuff going on, and I'm based out of Toronto, Canada, so happy to be here and glad to see so many interested people out there.
Now, Ken, one of the things that you and I cover both on your show and also on Transport Evolved is we cover a wide range of different vehicles.
Yes.
We're not just focusing on one particular brand. And there's a very good reason for that, right? That you do it for your channel. I suspect the reason's the same as I.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about choice and that the movement can't just occur with one single geography, one single manufacturer, one single country. To make a difference in climate change or whatever you want to call what's going on, what we're experiencing, we need the global phenomenon to occur. And you look at countries like China that have been very progressive and have dozens of different EV models. We need that model globally, and that's what we focus on. I think both of us Nikki is looking at what's available in those market spaces around the world and what innovation is going on, because there's a lot of stuff happening.
Right, and it's all too easy in the electric vehicle world to think that everybody who buys an electric vehicle has a couple of $100,000 sitting in the bank, and they're going to write a blank check to whoever can give them a car that goes the furthest, the fastest, and charges in the shortest amount of time. But a lot of people don't have the spare cash to shell out on a brand new car. They're looking for a used car. And today we're going to talk about how you go about choosing a car for you, be it a brand new one or a used vehicle. So, Seneca, I want to start with you. How would you advise someone who walks into your showroom or contacts you and says, you know, I have an 80-mile commute that I have to do every day, and I'm looking for an electric car that suits my budget of, I don't know, I've got $30,000, no more. What's your response at that point?
It's a great question, and usually it's understanding where they live, so the geography, the climate, because there are cars that see an impact in range in cold weather, but the commute is probably the first question. How far do you drive? What charging solutions do you have access to? Are you charging at home, or do you have to charge in public infrastructure if you live in an apartment or a condo? And then, do you have a family? Do you have children, or do you haul cargo around? So understanding if you need a car or an SUV. And once you get that basic understanding of the needs analysis for that individual person, you can kind of funnel some options their way.
Right. And one of the things that, I threw you a curveball there a little bit, and Raejean, this is something that people always fall into the trap of assuming that they need an electric car that can go a huge distance and buy a car that suits their needs 90% of the time, but they don't want a car that suits their needs 90% of the time. They want to buy it for that 1% when they've got to go and see their granny 6 states over. So how do you get past that? How do you convince yourself that, no, actually, this particular car is going to suit my needs for a daily commute of 30 miles, rather than, very few people drive 80 miles a day. So I threw a curveball at Seneca there. But most people, right, what's the average commute for most people?
The average commute for most people is under 40 miles a day. And yes, under. And, they do tend to, because electric fuel is new to most people, they tend to overestimate what they might need. On the other hand, their emotional needs are important. And to help them sort through that, I think, of course, what is a good thing to do is to find an EV buddy, to find a person that's driving. So come into one of our chapters, maybe there's someone at home in your neighborhood or at work, and find someone who's actually driving electric and get them to talk about their experience of range and how they have found it.
Absolutely. And you may notice that Raejean is wearing a big green pin. I have to think about it, because I still call these badges, despite being an American and living
you're British.
Yes,
you're British.
I'm
we
British,
forgive
really.
You.
I have a U.S. passport, though. Honest. If you see people with those pins on, it means what, Raejean?
Well, it means you're supposed to tell your EV story to anyone who asks you. It's an invitation. You say, "I'm open for business. I love driving my EV. I'm an enthusiast, and because I drive electric, I know a little something. I'm not an expert on every single car out there, but you can ask me about what my own personal experience is, and then you take that information as a new consumer, and you take it in yourself and figure out, is that true for me? What kinds of things are true for me? And it helps move you closer to a level of comfort."
Right. And talking to other people who have EVs is super important in your journey to figuring out which car best suits your needs. And it can be the silliest little things. It can be, I can't get this particular item in my car, therefore I need a slightly different vehicle. a lot of people I know, that have the question, well, why don't you buy an X or a Y? And often you have to sort of think about what your hobbies are, what you like doing on your days off, what kind of jobs you might have to do for work, what kind of trips you might have to do for work. And one way of getting around all of that is to build a log, right, Ken, of your daily driving habits before you even go out and buy that car.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I'm in sales, so I actually keep a mileage log myself. And when I was looking for an EV for my personal journey, that was a critical tool in helping me support my decision in EVs. Because you're right, you kind of think about, well, if I need to go to another city and that's a long trip, but I'm only doing it once a year, should I make a purchase on that? Well, but my driving log supports the fact that I'm only doing 50, 60, 70 kilometers a day for 90+% of my driving.
So 50 kilometers, for those who don't know, is about 30 miles.
30 to 40 miles, so right in that bubble zone. So absolutely, trying to analyze what your habits are. And, you heard from the panel some of the other, ergonomic and car choice factors like size and do I have a family or am I going to have a family? Do I have pets or do I need to haul stuff? All those decisions as part of your thought process when you are looking at an EV and more choice. I mean, when you started doing Transport Evolved, 3 years ago?
So Transport Evolved has been running for about 10 years in one form or another. When it used to be a podcast.
So pioneer.
It's been around a while.
Yeah.
I feel old now.
But in the last 4 years, the amount of choice and the development has just done the hockey stick, right?
It really has. And hockey is a good thing. So I'm glad the Canadian got hockey in there.
I got to throw hockey in there.
You had to try,
for sure.
Yeah. So Seneca, one of the other considerations for people when they're buying a car, whether it's a new one or a used one, is what happens after they leave the dealer lot, after they leave the showroom, after they pick up their keys. What advice do you give customers when they're trying to pick a brand that they know is going to be easy to fix or easy to live with?
I guess it depends on the brand. Interesting enough, there's a lot of dealers in the Midwest that are not certified to repair electric vehicles, and that's where we're based. We're based in Chicago. And recently, a Kia store 20 miles north of us finally paid the money to be certified by the factory to repair any Kia electric vehicles under warranty. And we were so thrilled because now we can stock more of those Kias in the event that they need work. So it's a certain consideration you should take into account, is making sure that the dealerships near you are certified for warranty repairs on the car. Otherwise, somebody that owned a car like that where we're based would have to ship the car to New York State to have warranty done.
Right, and that is a big challenge. Put your hands up if you heard of the term compliance car. All right, so for those who don't know, compliance cars, Raejean, were cars that were built to satisfy California's zero-emission mandate, right? Tell us where they were sold.
Sold in California, sold in several other, is it 11 now, ZEV states? Who was the most recent? Minnesota? You could get it to be a ZEV state? Yeah.
But the challenge with that is a lot of dealerships outside of those states, they don't know how to repair the car. And for those of you who don't know, it's not like an old school car dealership where if it's got four wheels and an engine, they can work on it. In order for car companies to honor warranty repairs and to authorize warranty repairs, dealerships have to pony up money, sometimes tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, to get all of that equipment and training that they need. And if you buy a new car from a dealer, the chances are that dealer is going to be certified to repair it. But we have a lot of people who talk about buying off of eBay or Craigslist or whatever, and you see cars popping up in areas of the Midwest that you might not expect. Trying to think of some. Maybe you guys can help me with the list.
Well, the Mitsubishi is not sold everywhere. The Kia Soul is not sold everywhere. You know, what I love to see is people, initial adopters, getting outside the box and kind of taking the chance anyway and getting the car, because if we start buying the cars, then in a way it forces the dealers to, pony up. So
Absolutely.
It's courage.
And it can be really liberating taking a car that was once a compliance car and buying it in a state that maybe is not supported. But it can also be a challenge, right?
Our three most popular cars are the Fiat 500e, Volkswagen e-Golf, and Kia Soul EV, aside from Tesla. And that's primarily driven by price. There's one certified Kia store in the Chicago area. There's one certified Fiat store, and in our business, there's a Volkswagen store that can do repair.
So let's talk now about something that people always worry about when they buy an electric vehicle, and that is what happens when ... So let's bust some myths. We've had the myth-busting panel already. But let's talk about batteries. Let's talk about some of the concerns and worries that people have and how you can overcome those in your process of choosing a car that fits your needs. What do we have to say about that concern?
Well, it speaks to range, of course. And again, this is 90% of the questions that we get have to do with charging. So really, a car is a car. We're still buying a car. The difference is the electric fuel. And if it makes some people more comfortable, we might just say, buy the biggest battery that you can afford.
Absolutely.
To give yourself that sense of comfort with your first EV. So more and more cars are having stronger ranges. We're getting up to 300, and a lot of the market research is telling us that's the tipping point. Most people want to know that a car is, even if they don't need it, that it's going to go 300 miles. And, we have the new Y coming out and cars now that can make that. So batteries are a big factor. And also in that, am I going to have to, there's so many misperceptions that, am I going to have to replace the battery? And I remember I asked that buying my first Kia Soul. And when they told me that they were warranting it for 100,000 miles, I said, I don't think I'm worried.
Yeah, and most EV batteries will last longer than the car. I mean, that's like 99.9% of use case scenarios, and people very often don't know that. Talking about fuel, I am going to throw out a shout out to a vendor who is here, who is at the back of this hall over here, the guys at ChargeWay. ChargeWay is a great app that you can get on your smartphone, which helps you understand how you fuel your car. It really simplifies the fueling process because it uses a system of colors and numbers. So when you buy your car, you just tap in and tell the app which car you have, and then it says, okay, you need to look for green charging stations, and the higher the number on the map, the more quickly you will be able to charge. It's really that simple. Go check them out if you haven't already. They are here all weekend. It's a great way of trying to get your head around the charging nightmare. Because let's face it, if you were in any other industry and someone asked you to remember the name, the specific name, the arcane name of whatever charging connector it happens to be, you wouldn't remember it, right? Unless you were a nerd like me, and there's nothing wrong with being a nerd. So, Ken, let's talk about how you go about making that choice in terms of you figured out how far your car needs to go. You figured out maybe how you're going to charge it, either nighttime or you've got a local charging network that you can use. How do you then go about figuring out how much your car is going to cost and what money you can get off your car in terms of incentives?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, in most jurisdictions now, from an incentive perspective, there's federal levels, there's state levels, a lot of municipal, and then there's even organizational, like I believe in California, some of the energy utilities are providing incentives for going EV. So these are all things that you can research and look. And the federal, tax credit incentive is manufacturer-based. Some of them have sunsetted, some of them haven't. So there's definitely things to take advantage of there. The other main benefit of EVs is operating costs. So they might cost a bit more, and in most cases they do cost a bit more than a comparable internal combustion vehicle. We will see cost parity over the next few years, but today we still have that disparity. So incentives help, but when you then factor in the operating costs over the lifetime that you plan to have that vehicle, you'll see financially that the model is very positive in support of electric vehicles because they cost so much less to operate. So to fuel, as we've heard, in Canada, for me to, in 2 years, I've done about 40,000 kilometers. So what's that, about 26,000 miles or so? And I've spent about $1,000 Canadian on fuel to do that kind of miles. So you can work that kind of miles into your own vehicle, into your use case, but I'm pretty confident that you've saved some money right there. Then operating and maintenance costs are low because there's about 1/10 of the part, or it's a very low number of parts in an EV versus an internal combustion vehicle. So there's not really a lot of stuff that can go wrong. There's no oil changes, there's no transmission fluid changes, things like this. So the dealers aren't happy because you're not seeing them very much, but the consumer is happy because they're not having to outlay all these costs.
So dealers, I have a question for Seneca in a second, but we came to dealers, so we're going to do the dealer question first. Raejean, dealers have a bit of a bad reputation, unless they're a Tesla showroom. Tesla stores obviously are really good. Yay, Tesla! Because they know how to sell cars. But there are some other dealerships. I have heard very good things of a local Audi dealership in Oklahoma who was partly responsible for helping arrange the towing vehicle that got the EV1 here. Chelsea was singing their praises earlier. A gentleman by the name of John, I don't know if he's here, but apparently they know how to sell electric vehicles. But a lot of dealerships either don't want to or aren't interested. Raejean, how do you get that test drive? When you walk into a dealership, because it can be really intimidating. It happened to me 2 weeks ago. I went in to talk about changing the lease on my Chevrolet Bolt EV as coming to the end of its lease. I was talking about changing over maybe to another Bolt. And the salesman was really pushy and not interested in really helping me get into that car. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, the dealer thing is a little bit tricky. We've learned something about dealers. They play it by the numbers. They want you coming in, and they want to close you when you're right there. Because the percentage of people who don't buy the minute you walk out that door is why they are so pushy. Here's what we advise. First of all, you want to be friendly with them. Even if you end up knowing far more than they know, don't put them down. This will not help your case. Sometimes we find success in calling to the internet sales manager. One of the points of data that they have is if you make an appointment for a test drive, they know you're more likely to buy. So you will get better attention and respect often if you call ahead.
Rather than just walking in.
Make an appointment, because now they know you're serious, and now you have a chance sometimes to talk or email with that person a little bit ahead. So put yourself a little bit leveraged with that dealer and walk in friendly. Don't lord it over them that you know far more if you do. And I think you'll have a better experience.
And would you guys lease or buy? Maybe one answer each.
Generally pre-owned purchase.
Okay. Raejean?
You're talking about buying used then. Yeah. Used is great because you avoid the depreciation costs, which are not kind of iffy in our world. So I don't know. I think it's personal preference, right. Buying a car.
Yeah. Ken, what would you
Definitely
do?
is, and mine's always purchase.
Yeah.
I like to have the ownership and then drive it to the ground, basically. Get my most money out of it.
If I was doing a new vehicle, like a Rivian, I would lease it.
Yeah.
To start.
I am actually regretting leasing my Bolt. I wish I had purchased it because I love Artemis. She is wonderful. I have no desire to sell her. Seneca, one final question for you. Can you explain to people who don't have the money for a brand new car what the best deals are on used vehicles? How do you get a used EV at the right price?
Tons of resources out there. There's a brand new website that just popped up called My EV, which is similar to cars.com, Car Gurus, but just for electric vehicles. Really great people behind that effort there. Very educational, especially on each individual model as you research it. Just in terms of value, right? Best value. Personal preference depends on your needs. Budget-wise, I would say under 20,000. is probably going to be a pre-owned Bolt, maybe a little bit of miles on it, maybe even a 17-plus e-Golf. Those are my 2 picks.
Yep. And also, I would also advise, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, if you have a choice between a car that has a rapid charging capability and one that doesn't, always go with a rapid charging.
Better resale.
Yep.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
also, if you have a choice between a car that has active thermally managed battery packs versus non-thermally managed battery packs, i.e. a choice between something like a Chevrolet Spark or a Nissan Leaf, go with a car with the active thermal management because it will make sure that your resale value stays higher and your car will actually be happier in the long run. We're gonna have some questions. This is our final session, so we can go a little long. And then we've got a little bit of a giveaway. So if you want to have free goodies, who doesn't want free goodies? I thought so. So let's have some questions from the floor, Dan.
Yes, the website you just mentioned, can you repeat? Because I looked it up and MY space EV doesn't show up.
Just MyEV altogether, myev.com.
MYEV, but it's not an app, it's a website.
Just a website.
Okay, thank you.
Hi guys, question about if you have a Spark EV, can that be serviced at a Chevy dealership that is certified to work on the Bolt EV?
Yes. We've sold quite a few Sparks in the Midwest, and those are compliance cars sold mostly on the West Coast and Northeast, and we have a lot of local customers getting their service done in Chicago. I have a question for the crowd. How many of you don't have an electric car and are considering one? It's amazing.
Oh, great. A majority.
And it's just the same as it was last year at Fully Charged Live in the UK, which is fantastic.
Awesome.
I've got another microphone, so we've got some more questions as well.
Thank you guys for your panel here. You guys talked a little bit about owners thinking about how they use their vehicle, what kind of battery range do they really need, and doing that kind of analysis that they wouldn't have to do otherwise if they're looking at a vehicle with a gas tank. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the role of plug-in hybrids in that used marketplace and giving folks an easy no regrets option in some cases where they don't have to really think too much about that long distance component that can be a real source of friction.
Well, it's also if you want to go to places where charging isn't really established yet. So, for example, if you're in Los Angeles and you want to go to Mammoth Lakes, California, up the 395, a beautiful route, lots of people want to go there, but non-Tesla charging is not abundant. So a PHEV, say the Mitsubishi Outlander, is a perfect choice for that and much better than a big honking diesel truck.
I would also add that I would much rather see 10 people buy a plug-in hybrid vehicle and enjoy electric and then make that transition to electric for their next or maybe even car after that than I would see them just go and buy another gasoline car.
Depending on which plug-in hybrid it is, it could serve most of your daily commute needs in pure electric power alone, such as the Chevy Volt or Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid.
Okay, we've got another question up front here.
Okay, the question that I have is about, what about Carvana to buy a used car? What about, as far as with, warranty and, repairs or anything like that, the coverage?
So the question is, how would you rate something like Carvana for buying a used EV?
Carvana is great, but you cannot test drive the car with Carvana. They do have a return policy. We consider them a competitor. We've actually had people come to our store and tell us that they chose not to buy from Carvana because we had the cars there that they could test drive back to back and make sure that it was the right purchase from day one instead of having to go through the return policy. And we're super proud of that, and we hope to grow as quickly as possible over the next...
Okay, guys. Just like to thank you all for what you do, and a long-time viewer of both your channels, Ken and Nikki.
Thank you.
Why not? Yeah.
Thank you.
I just was curious, there's a newer model as well, the subscription-based service. We have steer.com, for example, in DC, and they're currently very high-end and expensive. Do you think that may be something that we'll see move down into the sort of the cheaper models where people just pay an all-in fee, not a lease, but a monthly subscription, and can actually change models as they need to As their needs change during a month, for example, they might need a truck for a weekend, something like that.
Yeah, sure. There's a company called Clutch that integrates with dealers and allows them to essentially turn their inventory into the subscription model. And we tested this with some of the cars and saw that it didn't really work out. A lot of folks just really wanted to have the peace of mind and knowledge that that car was theirs and no one else's. It's personal preference. I think really the economics of that really have to come way down to make it really attractive. And residual values, as cars get used, the value tends to decrease quickly. So I think subscription is sort of, the jury's still out on subscription.
And with subscription services, you have to remember that cars are the second most expensive thing that people buy in their lifetime, generally. And so we tend to make cars that are considered a personal extension of who we are, what we want the world to see about us. And so when you are using a subscription-based service, you take away some of that person's potential for expressing their personal identity. And I think that's one of the reasons why the services haven't caught on, but it's also a societal thing. Some societies it's doing much better in Europe than it is over here, for example. Our final question, and then we're going to have a giveaway.
How does insurance factor into selecting my new electric vehicle?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, I can add a couple points. I'm sure it's the same for here in the States, but certainly up in Canada, in most insurance carriers, again, that's personal reflection on where you live, your driving record, all that kind of stuff, age, and other factors. But traditionally, it's less expensive because EVs are inherently safer with the rigidity of the battery packs and then extra structural integrity that they provide. They generally score higher on crash tests and ratings, so there's that factor. And then also there's a less number of parts. So there's less mechanics, less things to fix and repair in an electric vehicle versus internal combustion. So insurance companies take those factors into consideration when they're doing their ratings and risk analysis. And typically I've seen the rates to be lower. Well, you guys the same thing?
You nailed it.
And they're coming down as they see the experience of safety is better.
That's a great point because insurance is also based heavily on historical, records and what's going on. So as we're seeing EVs that have been around now for a few years, and the amount of accidents and the amount of injuries and all these kind of things are much less than typically than internal combustion, that's factoring into insurance rating as well.
Well, thank you very much, our panel. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Where can people find out more about you and your fantastic show?
Oh, God bless you. EV Revolution Show. I'm on YouTube, based out of Toronto, Canada. Please check me out. And I love to hear comments and hear people's stories. So thank you.
And Ken travels to some great places and covers some great content that a lot of other people don't.
And I can't say no to the fully charged folks. So UK is a great place, yeah.
All right, Seneca, thank you very much for joining us. Where can people find out more about Current Automotive and maybe even get their next car from you guys?
We're in the back corner over here. We have a booth, and currentautomotive.com.
Okay, fantastic. Raejean, my favorite. You guys have been around educating and advocating for electric vehicles for a really long time, but it's never too late to join the EAA, and it's never too late to get involved. Tell us about how you can join the EAA, find a local chapter, and maybe join one of your social events.
Thank you, Nikki. Yes, electricauto.org. And today, if you join, so special, we're giving away the very wonderful EV buying guide. This is the only full-color, real in print.
It's
really
good.
And I know we want to do everything digitally. Oh, I'm upside down. Oh, my goodness.
But it's still really good upside down.
That looks better, doesn't it? Don't tell Chris Allen. Okay, anyway, it's got the wonderful Cybertruck on the front. But this is a $6 value. Sign up with Electric Auto this weekend, and you get that. And you become part of an amazing community of thousands of EV enthusiasts all over the country and all over the world, and we would welcome you.
And it doesn't matter whether you have a car with a 2-mile range or a 200-mile range, the EAA welcomes you with open arms. Thank you, everybody, for taking part in the panel today.
Thank you.
Well, a big thank you to all our panelists on this talk. It would be splendid and tremendous if you could share this podcast with your friends and family, whatever way you'd like to, just to spread the word, because there's some really interesting episodes coming up on the Fully Charged Show podcast. Not to mention Fully Charged Show on YouTube. Didn't even mention that. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating if you're in the mood, because it really is lovely, and put a review on your favourite podcast player, as it helps us to get discovered and increases our reach to spread the sustainability message. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our 2 YouTube channels, which include Fully Charged Raejean, which has all these talks in video form. And there's always fullycharged.show. There are 4 reasons. I've got 4 reasons to go to fullycharged.show. So Fully Charged Live tickets, all the information and availability of the tickets for Fully Charged Live. The next show is coming up in the UK at Farnborough on the 1st, 2nd and 3rd of May. We have our A to Z guide, which I've now met someone in a car park. It's brilliant when this happens. Met someone in the car park who really loves the A to Z guide. Someone I didn't know, but they'd seen it. So it's a really comprehensive guide, not only to cars, but to loads of technology you can use in your home. So, starting with solar panels, obviously, or things like that, wind turbines, battery storage, amazing water heating systems, heat pumps, all that kind of stuff. There's also a merchandise page where you can get your fabulous Fully Charged branded products. And lastly, and very, very importantly, Patreon. So a huge thank you to all our many hundreds, now, what am I saying, thousands of Patreon supporters. Without your help, we simply just would not be able to keep you informed and keep making all the shows we do. All our support from Patreon goes directly into the show, actually directly into the production, doesn't go anywhere else. So, it pays for editors and camera operators and equipment and editing stuff and editing, all that stuff. That's where that money goes. So it is fantastic. So if you would like to support us, the Patreon might be a good fit. As always, no pressure, but there will be a link in the show notes. So that's it. Enough waffle from me. We'll talk to you soon on another episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. And so, if you have been, as always, thank you for listening. And don't forget, I've already said that,